Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I've got a special guest, my friend Mike Killen. Stick around to learn how to become more confident in the sales process, how to handle pricing objections, and why you shouldn't be afraid to put your content out there. Mike Killen works with marketing funnel businesses to help them attract and close five-figure projects. He wants to get sales training into the hands of every child and school in the world because sales builds confidence and confident people make better decisions. He's the author of From Single to Scale and Run Sell Your Service. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Mike. It's great to have you here.
Hey there, how you doing? Not at all. It's really good to catch up with you again, Colleen. Thank you for having me on.
Too bad this isn't video because, we're all missing out on Mike's hair day by this being an audio.
I don't understand this. I genuinely get messages from people being like, hey man, love your hair today. And I don't know if there's like a group out there that's like, what we should do is we should freak him out and every once in a while send him a message. Because I don't think it's that crazy. I just have hair that I have. Anyway, it's, fine. Thank you though, but yeah.
Michael McGinty in the Design Domination Facebook group joked that your approach to marketing is like an Italian taxi driver. No waffling, no chit-chat, just straight to the point.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. I'll take it as a compliment. I know he meant it as a compliment, but yeah, maybe aggressive as well.
That's funny. So I wanted to just share with the listeners that you and I, we met a couple years ago at a WP Elevation Mastermind in Miami, and we hung out and had a blast. And you were a coach for WP Elevation.
Yeah.
And you've always come across with a lot of confidence. And, I could only wish that I had that much confidence when I was starting out in my career. So I'd love to know, where does this confidence come from?
That's a really interesting question. I was only talking to someone about that kind of last week. I was actually really shy and nervous as a kid. I was bullied a lot, like a lot of people who are like kind of digital creatives.
Yes, I was.
Yeah, right. It's a pretty common trait. And I was very small for my age. I think at the age of 18, I realized that everything you go through at school doesn't matter. Like as soon as you leave college, as soon as you leave school, it's like, oh, none of that matters then. And that was a huge realization that everyone who was kind of considered like a big deal at the age of 16 or 17, you obviously look back now and you're like, well, it didn't matter. And I think I had this sudden moment of realization. I then went away traveling by myself for quite a while, basically as a kid. And I think I went through a lot of experiences, and a big part of, people say that I'm confident. It's actually like the back and forth we have now is kind of a bit of an act. I'm super, super kind of quiet. I'm very chilled out. I think it's just, I found it easier to help people if you're just really clear, and typically things that are delivered with clarity and things that seem very clear seem to be like confidence. So I think it looks a lot like confidence, but in actual fact I think it's just repetition and training. So maybe that's it.
Yeah. How do you think that confidence helps play into the sales process? Like, what part does it play?
Yeah, and that's the big thing I get asked about a lot, particularly as someone who teaches people how to sell, is, oh, I don't have the confidence to do that. Like,
Right.
I don't have the confidence to be a salesperson or to say the things that I teach people to say. And if you rank or look at the traits that you think are attractive about someone, usually confidence ranks pretty highly. But then if you break down what confidence is really just kind of practice within one particular area and feeling comfortable that you're clear on what the outcome will be. Those typically tend to be the two outcomes. And there are some areas that are very interesting about confidence. Let's take design, for example. When you produce something in a particular skilled area, such as, graphic design or digital design, and you put it out there into the world, some people will look at that and go, oh my God, there's no way that I could do that.
Right.
There's a massive amount of skill and talent. Now, I would argue that that's confidence, Confidence to put something out there because like you say, you're practiced in the area, you're comfortable in that area, and you're pretty confident on what the results will be. Sales is exactly the same. Confidence helps with sales, but confidence is actually being kind of clear on what the outcome is and being more kind of sure on what the outcome will be. And that's typically through practice and skill. It's not something you're born with, it's something you grow and develop and nurture. And hopefully some of the tips I can share with you today will be things that if you just do every time you have a conversation, you will look a lot more confident when selling, as opposed to just becoming a more confident person.
And when it comes to demonstrating expertise, I tell designers all the time, you've really got to get content out there. I mean, you're the master of this, of course, but,
Yeah.
I tell them, get it out there. And some of them are lacking confidence and they're like, well, what if somebody doesn't like what I say, or they don't think it's right, or they don't agree with it? How am I,
Yeah.
they're like, how am I supposed to put it out there if I'm not confident? So it's like they're not just talking on the phone to somebody, they're trying to put something out there online for a mass audience who can judge them.
Yeah, that's tough, man. And it is, if anyone goes to any YouTube channel, it's mine as much as anyone's, you'll see a ton of people that say, this guy's an absolute joke. He clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. The easiest way that I've learned to deal with that is by agreeing with people. If I put a video out there and they say, this guy's an absolute moron, he clearly doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm like, yeah, man, you're probably right. I might not know what I'm talking about. Done. End of conversation. Like, what else do you want me to say about that? Anyone who ever has a go at a creative endeavor, and this is true of all creative pursuits, design, I would even have sales as a creative pursuit, marketing, music, art, whatever you put out there. And if someone directly has a go at it, they are not having a go at you ever. All they're saying is that they don't feel that they could do that. So when someone has a go at my marketing techniques on YouTube, I know that they're not having a go at me. They're actually saying there's no way that I could do that. That's what they're really saying. So the first thing is to understand when you put anything out there, yeah, you are going to attract negative attention, but it's actually not directed at you. And if you agree with them, it kind of negates any impact it has. And secondly, this is the other thing, and this is the thing I think people find maybe a bit more scary, is people already don't like you. You just don't know it, but already 10% of the world, 20% of the world doesn't like you. They don't like who
Yeah.
you are. They don't like what you do. They don't like what you stand for. They don't like how you act, how you behave. If you produce content and put it out there, whether it's written, whether it's design, whether it's visual, audio, whatever it is, you're just expanding the number of people who get in touch with you. The percentage of people who don't like you is always going to stay the same.
Wow, that's really interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and like if you have a conversation with people at like a dinner party, you're always going to have people who are like, "Oh, I don't quite agree with that." Fine, that's in a room of 10 people, 20 people. You expand that out into, a billion, it's going to be roughly the same percentage. It's pretty low. It actually doesn't happen. And it's just a part of running a business. It's not a case of whether you're even right or wrong. Some people they just can't help themselves but be negative. And if you find ways of just kind of being able to rationalize that yourself, it's much easier to put stuff out there. But we could go down this rabbit hole like a long way. Yeah, I mean, you talked about the podcast. How have you found putting this out? Like, what's the feedback been like?
Oh, actually, I couldn't have had a better experience because I was very confident about what I knew. And I was really interested in getting my stories and experiences out there because I knew other people had experienced these things, or maybe I could help them not experience some of the crap that I've dealt with. But when I put it out there, yeah, I was really terrified because I don't like
Yeah.
criticism, and I don't like to, because I was bullied in school too, and a lot of it stems to that. But
Yep.
I've had really amazing feedback, and it's only like helped me personally and professionally grow from having done that. And yeah, it's been great. I was surprised.
Yeah, and this is the thing is I think you are actually more like humans are very bad risk assessment animals. We're very bad at risk assessment typically. So when we think, oh my God, if I put something out there, the funny thing about video in particular and in the world we live in is I was helping a friend of mine and she was like, oh, I was told I shouldn't do any YouTube content until I have this type of background, until I have this type of mic, whatever. And I was like, that's all of that's not true. First of all, everyone who's given you that advice Unless they've got tens of thousands of subscribers, ignore them, because they're not giving you advice, they're giving you opinion, right? The second thing is, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have 10,000 people view your video or listen to you and go, oh my God, this is absolute garbage. But that's 10,000 people. Your problem will not be finding 10,000 people that hate you. There are certain people that make a career off that. Your problem will be finding people who want to listen to you in the first place. Like, don't worry about people not liking you. That just means you're finding a bigger audience. As soon as you start hearing negative feedback, that's good, because it means you've got out there to a wider group. The worst thing that happens is that you're going to have 10,000 people say, this isn't very good, but that's 10,000 people who now know who you are.
Right. Well, I've heard that you haven't really made it until you have your first hater,
Yeah.
And I actually had a bad review. I got a bad review on the podcast from a hater. I mean, it was totally not even constructive criticism. It was just,
Yeah, exactly.
she hates my giggles. But everyone else has said, oh, I love that. It's great. And, whatever.
Yeah, what the hell? Yeah, I especially love your giggles and laugh. That's one of the endearing qualities. But you're right. This is what I mean. That goes back to that first point. People don't hate you. They don't even hate your content. What they're finding is a part of themselves that they don't like, that you're exposing. I guarantee, dollars to donuts, that person at one point has been told that people don't like their laugh. I will promise you that it's a level of projection, and almost all of the bad reviews and stuff we see out there are actually just people working through their own issues. It's like a trait. You don't need to say anything at all, but if you do need to say something negative, it's usually a reflection on something yourself. So it's people aren't ever hating on your content. What they really don't like is a part of themselves. So like I said, we can go down that rabbit hole, but that's kind of the crux of it.
Right. Well, confidence and mindset, they go hand in hand. And well, most designers go into this mindset, and it's the wrong mindset that when they hear a pricing objection from a client, the client's just not ready to accept and move on to work with them.
Yeah.
They really internalize that. And by internalizing, I mean that they think that, oh, that my pricing must have been wrong because they're not accepting it. But the pricing is not for pleasing the client, So the fact that the client questioned it must mean that they shouldn't have charged that much, and then they're like, oh crap, what do I do now? And then they blame themselves instead of understanding more about the buying process.
Yep.
And one of the objections that they might hear a lot is, oh, well, this is too expensive, or, we cannot afford that. And what you say on your YouTube channels, which I love, is that's not an objection. So can you expand on that, why that's not an objection?
So there's a few parts to this we're going to have to unpack, and it's not something that when someone listens to this, if you're listening to this right now, you're not going to listen to this and then instantly accept everything I'm going to tell you, because there's a lot to unpack here, and it goes against some of the things that we've been taught since children. It goes against some of the things we're taught as an entire society, like stuff like the customer's always right.
Yeah.
The market dictates the price. None of that's true. Okay. The first and most important thing to understand is the price is your price. It's got nothing to do with the customer. That's it. It's your price. If you know you need to make £300,000 or $300,000 a year, and you need to sell 10 $30,000 logos, great. That's it. That's the price. When someone comes back to you and says, oh man, that's kind of expensive, the first thing you need to understand is they're not saying no. They're just saying it's kind of expensive. And you have to say, yep, I agree. Sign here, send over a deposit, and we can get started today. When I bought this house that I'm currently standing in doing this recording, I wasn't looking at it going, ah man, what a steal. I am really happy to be spending £200,000 on this essentially pile of bricks and mortar. Of course not. It's way too expensive. Buying a car is too much. I pay too much for my credit cards. I pay too much for the rent at my office. Everything costs money, but we still do it. Someone who comes back to you just says, that's too expensive. Don't think that you have to go back to selling or negotiating your price or anything like that. They're not even saying no. Chances are, a bit like the negative comments we heard earlier, like about YouTube or reviews or whatever, it's just a complaint. And that's the problem. So you have to understand an objection is not a pricing objection, in inverted commas and quotes, is not an objection. It's a complaint. It's a bit like them saying it is absolutely pouring cats and dogs out there. You go, yeah, man, tell me about it. Anyway, sign here, send over the deposit, and we can get started today. And I promise you that most people who say that's too expensive, Even if they go, that's a lot of money, I don't know if we can afford that. Yeah, it is a lot of money. I completely agree. We're worth it though. Anyway, send over the deposit, sign here, and we can get started today. They'll go, okay, cool. They just want to be, they need to get something out there. People can't help themselves. My stepdad's a really good example of this. He says that's way too expensive to everything. But sure enough, my mum eventually kind of twists his arm and says, we need the kitchen redone or whatever it is, right? So it's not even a case of whether it is too much money. Assuming you've done your due diligence up front, you've asked them their budget up front, and we can kind of talk about that a bit as well. It's not an objection, it's a complaint, and you have to treat it like a complaint. 99.9% of the time, it's stuff that you can't even do anything about. That's that when people say, oh my god, you know, thanks for sending over this proposal, my son, he's an absolute moron, he keeps messing up the company, we've taken him on board as a director. You go, that sucks, he does sound like a moron. Anyway, sign here, send over the deposit. It's a complaint, it's not an objection.
And I think maybe the bigger deal that you make of it, that makes it a bigger deal in their minds too, do you think?
100%. Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like you and I have both got dogs. I see it a lot of time with dog owners. When you have like a really neurotic kind of overly nervous owner, you have a really neurotic overly nervous dog. So if you're just chilled out about the price, I hear about everything. I hear about the book. I released a book the other day for $6.99, and someone was like, oh man, are you going to do a lower price? I was like, $7.
That's crazy.
What do you yeah, what do you want me to do about this? So it doesn't matter what the price is. The price is irrelevant. I mean, we can go into the whole thing of like money is fake. Money is a myth. Like you can't eat money, you can't put money in the car. You have to exchange it for something. So it's only worth something when you give it to someone anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So like the whole principle around, you're absolutely right. If you're chilled out about it and you hear that complaint all the time, just treat it like, yeah, man, tell me about it. Anyway, sign here, send over the deposit, we can get started today. That's as big a deal as you need to. And here's the reason you do that. We'll come back to the pricing stuff, but people might have a real objection. They might have an actual objection, which is where they don't trust you, they don't trust the product, or they don't understand the price, right? Typically, those are the three. They don't understand the price. Not it's a lot of money. I know that buying this house is a lot of money, but I understand the price. I understand why it's charged that much. I understand, what the constraints are. But if they say no, 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 I don't want to sign just yet. I don't want to pay for this just yet. We've already moved past the fact that it's too expensive, and you say, okay, so what's the real reason that you don't want to buy today? What's the real reason? And if they go, I just don't know if we've got it in the budget. And again, that sounds like a pricing objection, but it's not. It's a complaint. You agree with them. If anyone's ever over budget, it's a good thing because it means they're a person who spends money. You go, yeah, man, tell me about it. I'm over budget on everything I do as well. But we know you've got this in. You told us you had this budget. We know you've got this in here. Sign here. Let's get started today. A lot of the time, it's the kind of the equivalent of when you've got to like go to the dentist or something. You kind of have to be pushed past it. You're like, I'm going to just put this off and put this off and put this off. You have to sort of coach the customer over that line.
Mm-hmm.
And the more kind of chilled out, exactly as you say, the more chilled out and the more experienced. And here's where confidence comes in, because even though you might internally be going, oh my god, this is terrifying, if you're just like, hey, no worries, I'm going to help you get over this, all you have to do is sign here, we can get started today. They're calm, they're chilled out, they're going to do it. The more stress you put on it, the more stress they put on
Yeah, that's true. It kind of reminds me of when, well, the last time I flew, I'm like in a panic situation. My husband's like, just calm down,
it.
and in my head, I'm freaking out and everything.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what we perceive confidence as. And again, another way of what people mistake for being confident is if you take a task which is seemingly very complex or even, imperceptible to magic. When I see like the guys who do like CGI, like for like movies and stuff, it might as well be magic to me. I don't even understand how they get that many artists and lighting technicians and
Right.
software designers to create this stuff. As far as I'm concerned, it's magic. So to me, they must really know what they're doing at the job, which I would display as a level of confidence. But it's not. It's a lot of practice and it's a lot of experience. And if you take practice and experience and apply it to a situation that you are comfortable at compared to something that other people are uncomfortable at, it's going to look like you're very confident and people naturally
Mm.
are going to follow you. So when someone says, "Oh my God, I cannot believe you've sent this over. This is $20,000. This is incredible amount of money." And if you just immediately internally think, "Yeah, okay, it is a lot of money," they're immediately like, "Oh my God, this person's dealt with this before. I'm throwing all kinds of stuff at them. I'm getting kind of all angry and anxious and having a little temper tantrum even." But they've obviously seen this before. They're super chilled out. So I must be in the wrong. I
Right.
must be doing something weird. You just go, "Yeah, it's a lot of money. Tell me about it." And just that phrase, "Yeah, I agree. Yep, I completely agree. I completely concur. It is a lot of money. Sign here. We can get started today." It completely de-escalates it. Completely de-escalates it, and most of the time, people are just going to follow along with you. And if they don't, that's a good thing because you're then going to understand the real objection and the real reason why they don't want to buy from you.
And that reminds me of like when I see designers asking in Facebook groups about like, what do you guys think of my pricing? And they don't put any context on it.
Yeah, yeah,
They might say what's included in the work. They don't say anything about the client.
yep,
It's all relative.
yep. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's so good. I really like that they don't include anything about the client because you're right. One of the big things I teach is don't go after startups. I think startups are a lousy market. They're absolutely
Yeah.
awful to work for. They haven't got their own brand. They don't even know what they're selling most of the time. They've had a load of seed capital come in from rich parents, and mummy and daddy have given them a ton of money. And they're like, "Cool, we need to go out and make some sales." I'm like, "Awesome. How many sales have you made already?" They're like, "Oh, we've made 0 sales." I'm like, "Right, I can't work with you." So if you look at who the customer is and we say, "Oh, we work with bakeries." Bakeries can't have that higher profit margin, but if you really want to go after them, great. Your prices might be considerably lower, but you also need to have a higher, like volume of people come through, and it needs to be a bit more turnkey as opposed to like a custom solution. But if you're working with, ironically, talking about startups like seed capital investment firms that deal with hundreds of millions of dollars of turnover and funding a year, they will spend 35 grand on a logo, no problem. Absolutely no problem.
Right.
The funny thing is that both of those clients are as easy to get hold of and as easy to sell to. Like, it doesn't matter that what the price is, it's actually who the customer is. And you're right, when people are like, "How much should I be charging?" I'm like, "Well, how much do you want to make?" That's the question. How much do you want to make? If you want to make 100 grand a year and you want to work with one client a month, you're going to have to charge roughly 10K a project. Simple as that. Now let's figure out who can afford 10K. What have you got that's worth 10K, and how can we get in front of that particular customer? It's not a pricing problem, it's usually a product problem.
And you could even have a big client. And then if you're pricing too low, they're expecting to pay a lot more. So those expectations there are out of alignment. So they're going to be like, well, you just don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. We've even seen that. We've seen customers. We coached a e-commerce business only recently, and they were like, "Look, we've got this project. It's 35K a month, but we know that the other guys are going to be undercutting us." And I was like, "For 35K a month, you shouldn't be going near undercutting anyone because that is positioning you in a bracket that knows what they're doing." And they said that they won the contract based on the price because the customer was like, "Well, you guys obviously know what you're doing. No one would charge 35 grand a month for this service unless they knew what they were doing." And yeah, they'd gone
Yeah.
through the sales process, they backed it up with case studies and stuff. But if some kid went in there and said, "Yeah, I could do this for 5 grand," and we've seen that happen, we see it happen all the time. There's a difference there, like
Yeah.
it should be obvious, and some customers will absolutely expect you to charge higher prices because that's the perceived value of the service.
Right. And that kind of leads me to my point about if you ever hear from a client, oh, hey, my nephew can do this, on Wix or
Yep.
whatever for $500. Why should I pay you
Yep.
$5,000 to do this?
Yep. So that's one of my favorite objections. And we get that a lot because I teach constantly like, "Oh, you should charge 25K for your websites, minimum, absolutely bare minimum." And whenever I speak, particularly if I'm being honest, kind of openly, a lot of word camps don't like it when I talk about that because they're like, "Oh my God, that's not how we work." But anyway, a lot of businesses, and they'll say, "Yeah, but I could charge a lot less because I don't have that many overheads, or I'm constantly being told that some clown down the road can do it less. The question you have to ask, and this is what happens, let's say you've put that forward to the customer, whatever it is, website design, logo design, even just like a branding package, and they say, well, I know someone else could do it a lot less. The only question you have to ask is, okay, why wouldn't you buy from them then? I go, because I kind of wanted to see what your price would be. All right, awesome. Why else wouldn't you want to buy from them? Oh, well, he's my nephew. I love him, but he's a bit of a moron. Great. Why else wouldn't you buy from him? He probably doesn't have as much experience as you. Okay, great. Why else? And you just exhaust that why else reason. You don't go to pricing. This is the thing. Even if you're comparing two products like for like, we bought a new TV recently. I went to the store here in the UK. It's called John Lewis. It's kind of like a premium level retail shop. And I said, look, this place down the road, they're selling the same TV 200 quid cheaper. And they said, okay, why wouldn't you buy from them then? I was like, oh, okay, awesome. I guess because their guarantee isn't long as yours. They went, okay, yeah, why else? And I said, well, I don't think their customer service is as good. Okay, why else? And I ended up selling the TV back to myself, despite the fact that the prices were more expensive. It's almost irrelevant. A lot of people will go to the price and say, oh, well, we could negotiate this or we could talk about this. Don't do that. Instead, say, why wouldn't you buy from them and why would you buy from me? It's just an open conversation. You're just having a chat. Chances are they'll end up selling you to them, because if they were so sure about the other person, they would be buying from them. The question is, they're saying to you, can you help me get over the line? Can you help me justify why I should work with you? So don't bring it down to price, bring it down to their own reasoning, their own justifications.
What's so great about what you just said is that you're not convincing them. They're kind of convincing themselves. So if you have to convince somebody, then it's like you're the snake oil salesman. But like when you're
Yeah.
helping them come to the conclusion in their own mind and they're making the choice themselves,
Yep.
then yeah, I mean, it's just great.
It's super simple. There's a couple of different ways to do this. So, of all the sales training in the world, closing and objection turning is my favorite thing to talk about. It makes me an extremely boring party guest. Liv's really annoyed because it means we're not invited anymore because I just want to talk about sales and closing objections and stuff, right? So the other way of doing that is when someone says to you, yeah, I'm not so sure about buying this. We've got past the price. It's not the budget. I just don't know if this is the right time. You go, awesome. Let's do a pros and cons list and just work out, is this the right thing for you? And they say, okay, so I'm going to think of a pro, you're going to think of a pro, I'm going to think of a con, you're going to think of a con. And you write it out and you say, okay, pro of buying. Well, I'll finally get our website sorted. Or also, I think another pro of buying is this. This shows a sign of maturity within your business. What's a con? Well, it's going to cost 35 grand. Great. What's a con? And you have to be honest. You have to go, well, it's a pretty sizable investment. Great. What's a pro? I promise you they will find more pros for whatever it is, working with you, working with somebody else, against working somebody else, the pricing, choosing that particular solution, moving with a CRM system as opposed to doing it in-house, whatever it is, they'll find more pros. And the sales process is only ever working out, does it make sense for two parties to work together? It's not your job to convince them that this is the right product. It's their job to convince them that it's the right product. So if you just work out, does this make sense for us to work together? And yeah, you're going to have people come up to you, say, you are way too expensive. I think your products are shoddy. I think your design sucks. I can't believe you use WordPress. Everybody knows that real businesses use Umbraco or whatever. You're like, great. You're probably going to be a nightmare customer. I don't want to work with you.
Right.
It's as much about you qualifying them out as them figuring out, do I want to work with this person?
Yeah, I mean, if there's that much friction in the sales process with them, I mean,
Yeah.
good grief. Red flags.
Yeah, exactly. Is it going to get better? Almost certainly not. 100%. It's all about red flags.
Yeah.
The only other time that pricing becomes a real problem is if you haven't done your due diligence. So this is when, if we put a proposal in front of someone, or we send over like a quote or whatever, and they'll say, 10 grand. We were kind of hoping it could be about like two. As a rule, I say you have about a 20 to 50% leeway. If someone's got 5 grand, they've got 10 grand. Like if someone's got 10 grand, they've got 12 grand. if you're hearing that a lot, and it's not just like, whoa, that's expensive, or whoa, that's a lot, because they're going to say that all the time. It doesn't matter. But unless you have asked them what their budget is in the first place, you have to ask that. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
It should be one of the first conversations. And yeah, it's a little bit awkward. There are ways you can phrase that. When we're having a conversation, this open, exploratory conversation, you say, okay, you go through all of their problems, like what are their needs, and then you just say, so what are you looking to spend on solving this problem? you know and if they say, I don't know, I was hoping you could tell me, stay quiet, stay completely silent, don't say a word until you get a number from them. Don't say a word. And it's very awkward, right? It's awful. But
Yeah.
it is awkward, but your job is to get a number out of them. If they're a proper business, if they take themselves seriously, they'll have a number in mind, and they'll and ah, and they'll try and talk around it like, well, what do you think? You just stay completely silent. And what ends up happening is they end up like looking for your approval, and they'll end up coming out with a number. They'll say, oh, we were thinking maybe 5 grand. You go, cool. Thank you so much. Now, if 5 grand's in your budget, which it shouldn't be, you need to confidently say, look, the minimum we deal with at this level is around $10,000 for what you're looking for. And again, stay completely silent. And if they go, yeah, okay, I think we could stretch to that, great, you've got your budget. If they go, absolutely not, completely out of the question, we don't have that kind of money, you know that you can't work with them. It's as simple as that. Move on, find somebody else, or find a product that they can buy that's worth $5,000. I think everyone thinks that I believe everything should be 25 grand. Like if it's a course, 25 grand. If it's a book, 25 grand. But it's not. The problem is I don't like people charging 5 grand for a 25 grand product. Around $5,000, up to about $5,000, even 10K, you need a scalable, repeatable product like a course, like a piece of software, like a system, something turnkey that you can sell to people. If people have only got 50 quid, great. Here's a copy of the book. Here's access to my blog. Until they start having these higher levels, they can't have your one-to-one time. That's like a more of a budget question during the qualification stage. And that's hugely important to get comfortable with that because it will help you further down the line.
And when you bring up money in the beginning, early on in the process, it really makes you appear more professional because
Yeah,
that's what professionals are doing. They're talking money. They're not waiting around and then later spending days or weeks on a proposal and trying to like throw something at the wall to see what sticks, with their budget. They're talking about it up front and then not wasting time if it's not a good match.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's not even a case of people thinking, oh, talking about money is awkward. That's not true. If I emailed you every 15 minutes and say, hey, you've just made another $1,000, all of a sudden money isn't very awkward to talk about, right? So it's not the money that's awkward. What they do is at the moment, they don't fully trust you. That's all it is. That's all it comes down to. You have to project enough of, exactly as you say, enough of a level of professionalism to the point where they think, look, Colleen clearly deals with this all the time. She wouldn't ask this question unless if it was needed. I need to be upfront. And in the same way that parents talk to their kids, if you give them space, they will be honest with you. If you ask them a question, they'll be honest with you. One of the things my mum was incredible at and did really, really well at, because my brother and I, frankly, were tearaways. We didn't really go to school. We kind of, went off and did our own things. But if she ever said, so tell me about your day, which is essentially the budget question for a kid. Because I'm like, oh my God, if I tell them, they're going to be completely embarrassed. And if you just give space, you don't talk, you don't interject, you don't try to answer for them, you don't try to give examples. Eventually, the psychology will turn around where they'll think, well, I need to give their approval. What's even worse is if you give an answer as a child, as the customer, but they still don't respond because that's clearly not the answer that they were looking for. So if you go, tell me what your budget is, they go, we've got an idea. We were hoping you could tell us. We don't really know. And just stay silent. Even that like 3 seconds there was agony, right? You just stay completely silent, and eventually they'll go. Internally, they're thinking, I've now offended this person. I haven't given them the right answer. They're still staying silent. Oh my God, 10 grand, and I promise you they'll get to it at some point. There are other ways to word it, but eventually, if you give people space, they will tell you everything you need to know.
Well, I don't stay silent like that, but
Try it. You need to try it. I promise you.
I am going to try it.
Your budget will double. Yeah.
I am going to try it though. But what I've done in the past, if they don't have a budget or if they say we haven't planned for this, I'm like, okay, expectation of cost.
Interesting.
So I don't just say, what is your budget? Because budget can be total BS. Just because they have a budget doesn't mean that it's the proper amount
Yep.
to do anything with for anybody, right? So
Yep.
I'll ask, what is your budget or expectation of cost? What kind of investment have you set aside to get this work done?
Yep.
And if they still don't know, I might be like, okay, is it $500, $5,000, $15,000? And then I will compare it to like a car. You're going to go buy a car. Well, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a Mercedes? Are we looking at a commuter car? Like, what are we looking at? What kind of ballpark are we in?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really interesting. The car thing is really interesting because the analogy works again on internally. Some people are like, I don't want to give you my full budget in case you push it to the max, or
Right.
I don't want to tell the freelancer I've got 15 grand because I want to push it to the max. And well, I'm pretty open and pretty brazen. So maybe this is where people think a lot of my confidence comes from. If someone goes, well, we don't want to tell you our full budget because we don't want kind of go to the max. I'm like, so just to make sure when you fill up your car, you make sure that you fill it up just beneath where it's full. Is that right? That you think that's the most efficient way of filling up a car with gas or petrol? And they're like, oh, no, I guess not. I go, of course I want to know what your full budget is because I want to know the full amount of resources that I've got to invest in your business. I'm not taking this money and putting it into my business. I'm taking this money and putting it into your business. If you give me 15 grand, I promise you you'll get 15 grand's worth of value, but only if I know you've got $15,000 to spend. Don't give me the range answer as a way of kind of reframing it. I'm trying to help you. You approach me. And there's ways you can kind of have fun with it, but internally when you are selling this and you begin to internalize this stuff and have this as your mindset, like, no, I deserve to have every single penny that the customer has. And there's like I said, that's a whole other rabbit hole, but you deserve to have the maximum resources at your disposal. And yeah, you've given some great examples of other ways that you can word that. But if you ever feel, well, I don't want to ask the budget because they don't want to tell me in case I push it to the max. Yes, that's kind of the reason we do it. That's why we have the pricing available. No one else does it in any other kind of industry except ours for some reason. It's our job to turn that round.
So one of the things that you talk about a lot is sell futures, not features.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so this kind of it's interesting because you brought up the pricing thing earlier, like, hey, this is what we want to offer. Do people think it's worth this? Like, this is our pricing structure. They'll tell people what the deliverables are. And we're constantly told, sell the benefits, sell the benefits, sell the benefits. And for whatever reason, we kind of refrain from that. The phrase sell futures, not features basically means, could you write up almost like a creative writing exercise the type of future that your customer will experience after buying your product? And we can prove that this works. Like, I have this little spiel, right? So I have this little sales process where I say, hey, the only problem you're going to have in the future is that you're going to have to buy a whole new wardrobe because none of your old clothes are going to fit you. You're going to be in such great shape. You're going to have to buy a whole new set of clothes. Everyone's going to be asking you, how do you look like that? Your skin's better, you're sleeping better, you'll have a better relationship with your kids because you'll have more energy to spend time with them. Everyone's going to be asking what your secret is. You're not going to have to go on any crazy diet. You're not having to wake up at 5 a.m. Does this sound like something that you want? And most of the time people say, yeah, that sounds incredible. I'd love to buy that. You go, great. Well, here's the price, here's whatever it is. Throughout that process of selling to you, of being desirable and being something that you want to buy, I didn't tell you what the product was. I didn't tell you whether it was a course, whether it was a book, whether it was a training program, whether it was PT sessions. It doesn't matter. Your business is designed to sell a future to the customer. Like, mine is to help people basically increase their prices and get better at selling. I've got a range of ways of doing that. I've got coaching, I've got courses, I've got books, I've got a blog posts, I've got a membership system, I've got one-on-one consulting and coaching. The price is irrelevant. It's all about the future that we're delivering to the customer. And you have to begin writing that future out. And literally, some of the exercises we do are writing out that future. Even for a logo, could you write out a future that looks like something that someone would pay 10 grand for?
Yeah.
If you start writing that out, you think, okay, well, the way that I do this is by delivering you a logo. You've skipped all of the, well, convince me it's worth it, because you're writing a future. It's clear who the niche is. Again, you mentioned, like, they haven't told you anything about the context of the customer, who the market is, who the niche is. When you're writing a future, you're clearly defining who that niche is, because surely only, in my case, it was clearly parents who are overweight who wanted to spend more time with their kids. That was implied through the future. So that's what becomes attractive, not the product. So that's what we mean by we sell futures, not features. We should be positioning to the customer the better future and how their life is better and how they're going to feel and the emotions and these illogical dumb things that they have. That's what they're buying. That is what the even things when buying a logo and a website, especially so, that's actually what they're buying.
Right, because branding is going to, help them reach the right audience. What is that going to do for them? Is that going to maybe help them double their income? I mean,
Yeah.
that could be something in their future.
Yep.
With a website, it's going to help them be able to take in more sales possibly. So
Yep.
what's that going to do for their income? I mean, there's so many different things and we have to always ask them what that is. And I think too that when we understand that value that we're delivering, then we feel more confident about what we're charging.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, how could I charge, $500 for a logo when this is what they're getting from this branding?
Yeah, if you do a little bit of exploratory calls with your customers, and we do it with our kind of private consulting clients, we don't have as many anymore, but we'll still do the same process. I'll say, okay, so why are you looking at doing more marketing? I'll say, we want more sales, we want to grow the business. Great. Every single business in the history of mankind has given me that answer. Why do you want to grow your business? And then they'll start to get into it and they're like, well, I'm thinking of kind of selling it in a couple of years. Great. That's the future that I want to sell to. Or they might go, you know what? And you get deep into it. You get to know these customers. They'll say, do you know what? I set up a business as a way of impressing my father. He ran a business, and I still feel that, frankly, it's not really a legitimate business. It's not a big boy business. We're kind of still playing. It's like a hobby that makes money. And these are businesses that do like 2, 3, 10, 20 million in turnover. But for whatever reason, they're still their internal. We talked about being bullied earlier. They're still living that out. You go, great. What about in the future, if your father turns around to you and says, I cannot believe you're running this, I'm so proud of you. You go, yeah, that's what I want. Ultimately, deep down, that's the transformation I want. Great. We have a branding package that helps turn businesses like yours that are essentially hobby-based money-making opportunities into big boy businesses that impress the people closest to them. And also in 2 years' time, you're going to be able to exit and sell. How does that sound? They go, oh my God, I absolutely want to buy this. All of a sudden, you're right. A logo is not worth $500. A logo is worth $10,000 because you're completely changing the future and the transformation that customer goes on just through asking them a few questions at the start.
Exactly. Okay, so now I've got a question that this is kind of, it's a little on topic, but so I have a question from Michael in the Facebook group, and he had asked, do you prefer Miles Becker or Neil Patel?
Right. Yes, he did. Yeah. Miles Beckler, 100 times over. Yeah. I think Neil has done some great work. I think he's got a very good team around him, but frankly, his advice now is garbage as far as I'm concerned. It's out of date. Some of the stuff he's posted recently is just so misguided.
That's what I've seen other people saying.
And yeah, he knows his stuff. He's grown some massively powerful businesses. But the problem is he is now applying 10-year-old corporate marketing tactics to smaller businesses, and it doesn't translate. Miles Beckler at the moment is incredibly relevant because he's taking advice and tactics that he uses in his business. The advice you get from a business that's doing anywhere up to maybe $5 million turnover a year is completely different from a business that's doing up to $20 million a year. If you're only making $100,000 a year, and the statistics show that most people in their businesses, this is kind of in the US, the UK, and most of Europe, around $30,000 a year, you can't take corporate branding and marketing expertise and apply it to a business that's barely making enough to live on. It doesn't work. Miles, on the other hand, he does work on businesses that is relevant to the turnover and the size and the type of businesses that they're running. So yeah, Miles Beckler 100 times. I didn't realize how passionately I cared about that. That's interesting.
So this has been really fun, and this has been so much information. This is so great. I can't thank you enough.
Oh no, thank you. Thank you for bringing me on.
So I wanted to let the listeners know that, From Single to Scale, I actually have that book. I love it. It's awesome. And I still need to leave you a review, by the way. And
Sure.
You've got another book coming out called Universe Fuel. So would you like to talk a little bit about that and when that comes out?
It's a very different book than From Single to Scale. Universe Fuel is basically, I noticed repeat patterns in how some people seem to just achieve lots every single day. They seem to have clarity, purpose on what they want to do. It's something I think, a lot of people ask me, they're like, how did you figure out that this is what you want to do every single day? And you get out of bed, and it's not to say I have this perfect idyllic lifestyle, like I still struggle with stuff, but overall there seem to be these traits that everyone who we admire and look up to seems to have, and it basically revolves around this pattern of what I would consider universe fuel. They kind of tap into this wider purpose. It's less spiritual, it's not nothing anything like that. It's just, what is it that they seem to have a lot of that seems to turbocharge and power their lives, and I think there's a way of getting more of it. So it's just a book on how to achieve more clarity, how to find purpose within your life, manage your time and energy levels a little bit better, and ultimately kind of have more of whatever you want. Yeah, and it's on Amazon. There's a, depending on when this goes out, there is a paperback version and a Kindle version. So you can just go ahead and search Universe Fuel, and there'll probably be a website at some point, but we haven't kind of got around to figuring that out yet.
Wow, I can't wait to get that book too.
I've also got a Facebook group. If you head to sellyourservice.co.uk/Facebook, it'll redirect you. It's called the Sell Your Service Private Mastermind, or /YouTube. That's where you can find my YouTube channel as well with all my free sales training. That's the easiest place to kind of get in touch with me if people have got any questions, and shoot me an email or put a message in the group. And I love talking about sales and pricing and objections or any of that kind of stuff. So go nuts.
I love your YouTube channel. It's great.
Thank you very much. I have a lot of fun using it. I like it as well.
I can tell you do.
I'm really enjoying the podcast, by the way. You're knocking this out of the park. This is great.
Oh, thank you.
What I like is your interview style. I like the way that you kind of offer feedback on some of the questions and the answers, as well as actually run the calls. It makes a big difference, and your personality lends to those type of conversations, and I think they get better answers out of people as well. So personally, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I love what you're doing.
Oh my God, like that, I could cry. Like that just made my month. Wow. That was like,
Good. I'm glad. Good.
Oh my God. I have to like play this back over and over again. Oh my God. If you liked this content, please leave a review and share it on social media. Do you need help enhancing your design skills or working through a freelancing issue? Go to creative-boost.com to apply for design mentoring. Also check out the free resources and join us in the Design Domination Facebook group.